This is LBC with Clive Bull.
LBC, I'm Clive Bull. We're talking at the moment about Trump coming to the UK and the growing list of people saying they're going to boycott the state banquet. Does this matter? 0345 6060 973. Zaina in Orpington. Hello, Zaina.
Hi, Clive.
Hello. What do you think?
Okay, so, obviously everybody's entitled to an opinion, regardless if it's, a good one or a bad one of anybody.
Of course.
With regards to Corbyn not turning up, I think it's a shame that he isn't going to, because it's a state dinner hosted by the Queen herself. So this is something out of respect for the Queen that I would do, regardless of how I feel about Donald Trump. But Donald Trump is such a pompous and arrogant person. I think he should be on the receiving end of some of some of these opinions. And if people aren't going to turn up because they don't like him, I think he ought to know that.
He probably knows that people. He's a divisive politician. He knows some people don't like him.
Well, that's the thing, though. Clive.
He knows there'll be protests.
He was a businessman before taking on this position.
Yeah,
and I think the majority of the American people that voted for him saw him as a successful businessman, and because he was a successful businessman, they thought, well, let's give him the seat, let's give him the White House, and let's see him turn this country around. So I think a lot of people took him on because of his business acumen, not because of his political background, because we all know he didn't have one. And I don't think he's gained one since being in the White House. I think he's clouded by an entourage of ill-informed people. I think he himself is quite ill-informed, and even if facts sort of come in and slap him in the face, you still sort of deny them and still stick with what he thinks he knows.
Yes, well, because that is... it probably works in business, and to a certain extent it works in politics. If you just say something over and over again, even if it's not true, eventually people start believing it.
So it makes no difference between him and his, and the previous presidents that have promised heaps and heaps of change for the country and didn't deliver.
It's all very well, though. As I say, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump for lots of reasons, but I do think when it comes down to certain events, it's probably unwise of Mr. Corbyn, who's trying to sell himself as a potential Prime Minister.
Yes, I agree.
It seems
on
petulant.
That point, I agree. Yes, I agree.
It's the kind of thing Donald Trump would do.
I think he should turn up just to sort of, just to show Donald Trump what good what a good country we are at hosting one of these things. I've never been, so I couldn't tell you. But it'd be a shame to turn it down because it's an invitation from the Queen. And out of respect for Her Majesty, I would turn up, whether I like the guests turning up or not.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Zaina. 0345 6060 973. Now, away from Donald Trump for a minute, what is happening as well with the Democrats? Who is going to be the next president if it's not another 4 years of Donald Trump? Well, Joe Biden declared this week that he's in the running. Reports today say his campaign has raised $6.3 million in the first 24 hours. According to reports, that's beating Bernie Sanders and Beto O'Rourke to top the Democratic field. Apparently, the campaign said 96,000 people donated money on the first day, which is about $65 per person. Well, let's talk to Robert Weiner, who's former spokesperson for the Clinton and Bush White Houses, now a National Democrat strategist who knows Joe Biden very well. Hello, Robert.
Hey, Clive, it's great to be with you. But I got to respond to your last guest. I agree, pompous and arrogant. But it's worse. He tells his national security advisor, don't brief me about Russia. And he tells all of this, it's not as though he has uninformed advisors. His entire national security team, all of the department heads told him that there was a high risk from Russia, a high risk from Korea, a high risk from China, what they were. And he runs out the next day and says they don't know what they're talking about. This is a guy who has his head shoved up, Clive, and to your previous guest. He is so uninformed. That's why, Clive, he was drowned out in the last congressional election just occurred. It's why he will be again defeated. The main issue in that congressional election was not Trump. It wasn't really health care. It was not Trump. And it again will be the case now. His
but he
polls
won.
are at the lowest ever at 39 or 37%.
He won, though, and so you must be thinking as Democrats, what are we going to learn from that? We don't want to mess up again.
Well, I'm with John Lewis, the great civil rights hero, who says, did he really win? He lost by 3 million, and Comey came out a week before the election and put the fear into the final independence and the Russian interference. This was a guy, in the judgment of many, who was an illegitimate president. And why Britain is taking him in and giving him the credibility when at first the Parliament was so joking about his stupidity that and arrogance that they wouldn't let him come when he first wanted to. Why is Britain, to be honest with you, letting him back in and giving him this place of honor when he is against the whole European Union?
He is the president, and you have to do certain things. Barely. Well, let's talk about who might replace him then, because if he really is that much of a case that you're making out, then it shouldn't even have been close at the last election, and it was. So what's going to happen?
It was very close.
It was very close.
Hillary would have won, but all right, let's talk about Joe Biden, which is what you wanted to do.
Joe Biden, he's the front runner, and he's raised lots of money, but there are a few problems. Not least, he's 76.
So let's not be ageist. It should be merits, not age. I was the chief of staff of the House Aging Committee, and we abolished mandatory retirement. Ageism is as odious as racism or sexism.
Absolutely.
And all of your older listeners will agree.
I agree with that totally, but I think people will have it in their mind, well, how old is he going to be? If he was to do 2 terms of office, for example, he'd be, well into his 80s. And that might be a strain for somebody. However, put age aside.
Well, what if he brought in, Clive? What if he brought in a Pete Buttigieg, for example, a young, dynamic person as his running mate? We were just talking about that around the family lunch table.
I keep hearing this name. Now, tell me more about him then.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Biden's delinquencies. Yes, he passed the crime bill. Yes, he was not nice to Anita Hill. He has admitted in both those cases those were mistakes that he has learned from. And by the way, we had the record crack epidemic, the record murders going on during the crime bill, and the Me Too movement didn't exist, and he has learned. We've all learned a lot from it, and he's the first to admit that. But there's no one more earthy and candid and more lunch bucket than Joe Biden, and that's why he's 8 points up in the polls now. It may not stand, but Buttigieg is rising like a rocket. He is the young upstart who is the best talker of all the candidates, and he is showing himself. And there's some real openness in America now to the fact that he happens to be gay, and he really out-talked Pence, saying, "Take that up with my creator."
And where are the women in all of this as well, in terms of women candidates?
Elizabeth Warren is rising and showing how she had a problem because Trump tried to say Pocahontas and Indian blip her away. Trump, the so open person and the so equal person about everything, right? And she got hurt by Trump in that, but she's fought back. And in the women's event that was just occurred, there's a consensus that Warren was the smartest of the bunch, and she will do okay. Kamala Harris is doing extremely well. And some of the others are doing extremely well, but Kamala Harris is rising as probably the best of the women candidates in terms of the options to win right now.
And just in the last minute we've got here, what's your response to this text that's just come in from a listener? It's Hillary's fault that he won, Clive. She should never have stood. Anyone else would have defeated him. Do you agree with that?
Hillary, I read her op-ed in the Washington Post, where she said the country is at stake and the national security and the future of the country are at stake. I think Hillary is not going to be taken especially seriously, though, in this election. There's a perception of been there, done that, had her shot. And I loved Hillary. I was one of her strongest supporters twice for president.
But she blew it.
But she's not going to be the nominee this time, and everybody knows that.
All right. Well, great to talk to you, Robert. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed, Robert Weiner, there, former spokesperson for the Clinton and Bush White Houses, now a national Democratic strategist who knows Joe Biden well. We'll no doubt be hearing much more about that and those who might take on Donald Trump. Coming up next, though, we're going to change the topic. We're going to talk about the prospect of a public vote. Labour is discussing internally, indeed, could we say rowing, over whether they should officially back a public vote on Brexit. Do you think that kind of vote is now inevitable? 0345 6060 973.